I'm here with Graeme James, the BC Conservative candidate for Kelowna-Lake Country, and he's going to answer some candidate questions that we've been giving to all the candidates. First of all, Graeme, the first subject I want to talk to you about is the move from the HST back to the PST-GST. We'd like to hear your thoughts on that whole situation and what happened there.
Well, the HST, when it was brought in, it was a mess. It was brought in, it wasn't on the radar prior to the last election, and then 3 days after the election we had the HST. And during the subsequent years that we had the HST, the Liberal government said it was revenue neutral. In fact, it was bringing in about $4 million extra in revenue a day. And then, of course, when it went out, it wasn't, we were lied to actually when it was brought in, when it was in, and when it was taken out. So I think that the people of British Columbia realized that and they voted against the HST in the referendum for that reason.
So one of the things that's been irritating for BC citizens is how there used to be 7% PST and we were promised that it would be the same, and now there's 12% tax on used cars. Yeah,
that was one of the reasons that really got my attention. We were promised that it would come back in the same way it went out, and I think people have to realize the new car dealership of British Columbia is one of the biggest contributors to the Liberal Party. They gave over $800,000 to the Liberal Party, and I think that had something to do with it. So I'm upset, and I know that the people out there are upset about it too.
Moving on to healthcare, overcrowding is a big problem in the hospitals right now. Some of the patients are spending days in the hallways due to a shortage of beds. What would you do or propose to alleviate that?
Well, it's been one of my planks on what I've been talking about throughout this election. Our healthcare is in crisis. The political parties don't want to talk about it. But we're spending great deals of money on it. We're paying for a world-class healthcare system, and we're not getting very good value for our money. The last report I read was up to 25% of the healthcare budget could be saved through finding those efficiencies within the system. That's billions of dollars a day, so we can use the same amount of money that we're putting into the system to better improve the system. But we have to find political parties that are willing to discuss it and willing to admit it. Right now the NDP and the Liberals won't touch this issue, and I think we have to find candidates that have the backbone to speak out and tell people that our healthcare system is in crisis.
So as far as communication goes, we found in the last civic election that many candidates started up social media accounts and were communicating with the public, and then once the campaign was over they turned them off. Would you promise to keep the channel open?
Yes, if elected. It's very difficult. I was in the last municipal election. It's very difficult to keep all those channels open after the election if you're not elected. It's a big job. I've got a couple people working on it right now in this election. But if it's a way to communicate to the electorate, and it's important that a MLA keep those channels open.
As far as ICBC goes, do you believe that ICBC deserves to have a monopoly in BC auto insurance? Obviously other provinces like Alberta have privatized, and it's made it a bit more competitive.
Well, I wouldn't be a conservative if I didn't believe in competition, but I really believe that ICBC is not given a chance to be a good corporation. This last election, or this last budget, the Liberal government took $224 million out of ICBC, so they're not being they're used as a cash cow for this Liberal government, and so they can't do what they're supposed to do, is represent the people and give the people relatively inexpensive insurance. So the Liberal government is it's not treating ICBC very well either.
In regards to industry, mining, forestry, oil and gas are what some call dirty or higher risk industries, and many of the jobs in this area are also higher paying and built this province. It is one thing to say that we only want green jobs, but we live in one of the most resource-rich areas in the world. How do we find harmony in these industries that we need to build our homes, fuel our needs, and provide the materials that we need to survive?
I really think we can do both, protect the environment and open up the resource sector in British Columbia. People don't realize that we need those high-paying jobs to fund the social programs that we need that everybody expects. So I think we can do both, protect our environment and open the resource sector up and find those high-paying jobs.
So the forest industry is just starting to get its head up. How would we make this industry healthy again?
Well, we have to do long-term planning. Because of the pine beetle, we've had accelerated cut, and we can't maintain that, of course. So there is going to be job losses, but we have to maintain a long-term strategy, and I think that's what the BC Conservatives will look for.
Some people call the pipelines to prosperity, and others call them pipelines to destruction. Where do you stand on this?
Well, I've been very open about it. Enbridge is not a good corporate citizen. Their track record on spill cleanup is appalling. But on the other hand, Mr. Black has a proposition to not only build the pipeline, to put a refinery at the end of it. So what you have is, if you just have a pipeline, you have a couple hundred jobs. But if you have a pipeline and a refinery, you have a couple hundred jobs and a couple thousand jobs, high-paying jobs. And I think we can do that in an environmental safe way and provide jobs, good-paying jobs for people of British Columbia.
So some countries have made large funding investments with great success. What projects would you lobby for to improve Kelowna? I'm going to list a few of them, but we can talk about them each as we go by. Sure. So how about the Kelowna Integrated Water Supply Plan? Do you support that?
I've been a supporter of that when I was on council. We signed a memorandum of understanding for the 5 water purveyors to work together to get funding for the $60 million in upgrades that's needed here in Kelowna. And we should treat that same as a sewer grants. You get a third funding from the federal government, a third funding from the provincial government, and the local taxpayers pay a third. And that's what we were looking for. And unfortunately, the provincial government, the Liberals, all they've done is promise, promise, promise. In the last 2 years, they've come with nothing. And it's unfortunate because they gave the city of Penticton, West Bench water users money. They had funding from federal, provincial, and local, and we didn't get anything. So as an MLA, I would be pushing for that very hard.
What about having free public Wi-Fi in the downtown Kelowna area? Would you support that?
Well, we have a lot of free Wi-Fi in the downtown area now. It's more of a civic issue. Provincial is not really, I wouldn't support it on the provincial level, but the civic level I would.
What about the idea of a high-speed bullet train to Vancouver and Calgary?
It's a nice thought, but we just don't have the population here to make it worthwhile, and we've looked at that a number of times, and we just don't have the population to support that.
Would you support internet voting on elections and referendums?
I would. There's some problems with it. You'd have to work it out, some safety problems, security problems, but I think it's a good idea.
And how do you feel about policing and closed caption television cameras in public areas?
Well, I don't mind it. If you don't have anything to hide, then what's the problem? I just don't think it's an issue, and I would not have any problems with it.
So in regards to education, what improvements or changes would you like to see made to the educational system?
Well, one of the reasons I left the Liberals is because the treatment in the last labor dispute with the Teachers Association. I had 2 kids in the higher grades, and they used my children as pawns in that political pawns, and so did the Teachers Association, and that's unacceptable. I think we can negotiate these things in a reasonable manner, and we should move forward with respect on both sides, and it wasn't done in that labor dispute.
How would you propose to make post-secondary education more accessible?
Well, that's a great question. I'm a fiscal conservative. I think we have to get our house in order so we can focus on education, trades training, healthcare, and that. But we waste so much money in government that we can't afford to do the right things, and we have to find those efficiencies in government, and then we can use that money to focus on education, healthcare, and those sort of things.
In regards to jobs, we've heard that Canada is fostering a new underclass. We have young adults that are highly educated and qualified, but they're working low-paying jobs in retail and the service industry. How would you suggest to solve this problem?
Well, I think we're doing some of it now. My son is 16. He's looking at trades now, so they're not pushing him, but they're asking him what he would like to do. We unfortunately have a lot of educated people in the arts, and they come out and they're working with my son as a dishwasher. So we have to help them decide at a younger age what avenues and give them options. These are the higher paying jobs, and they can make their own decision then.
What do you think is an appropriate minimum wage given the cost of living throughout the province and the financial considerations of small business?
Well, it's a hard question. The minimum wage was just raised. There weren't very many consultations with business, and it was a hit to small business. And I know it's difficult. It's almost impossible to live at that wage, but we have to start somewhere. It's in the middle of the class now, and before we raise that minimum wage again, we have to do consultation, and we have to let small businesses. There's very small margins in small business now, and it affects everybody, and we have to take that into consideration if we're looking for a raise in that minimum wage.
Thanks, Graeme, for coming in today. You can find Graeme James' questions and answers in his profile in KelownaVotes.com under Questions and Answers with Welcome to Kelowna. You can find information on all the candidates there and all of their answers to the questions that we sent them. Thanks again.
Thank you.